Welcome everyone. I thought we might start now and give us extra time. Welcome to Successful Digital Learning Support. I must admit my first experience in the digital age was in 1987. I was at National University doing a Masters, and I went into the library, and normally there's a card system. So if you wanted the author, it's A to Z. And if you wanted the title of the book, you go to the other side, and it's the title A to Z. So it was just a normal day. I was quite happy. And I went in, and there was a notice there. It said that that had all changed, and everything was in microfiche. I could see everyone looking at me. He doesn't know what microfiche is. So I quickly left the library. When there was no one looking, late at night, I went and I'm sure no one was looking, and I looked up microfiche, and I got over that hurdle. And ever since, there's been one hurdle after another as new things come online. So I hope I can get a lot from this. A very special speaker, Annika McPhail, Digital Learning Specialist, Cyclone, Paul Donnelly and Christine O'Neill, DRS and Principal, St Thomas, Canterbury College, Christchurch. So I'll introduce them, let them come and share their gifts with us.
Good morning everyone, and welcome to our presentation. It was announced that, well, I'm supposed to be the DRS, but I really am not the DRS anymore. I'm the Deputy Principal, because if you give the DRS this job, what I'm about to say, they'll go insane. So it's, I was a DRS, but I've had a job change, and now I look after, at St Thomas's, all the technical infrastructure, BYOD, McPhail, and all that manner of things really to do with it. I'm going to give a presentation. It's going to be very, very quick, because you don't want to listen to me too much. But you're most welcome to come down to St Thomas's. We can Skype and have a good talk about why this model of ours has been very effective for us, and I'd have to say a radical change to how we think about schools, how we think about St Thomas's, and what it means to be a Catholic school in the 21st century. My first slide, sorry, I've got to switch on. God, yeah, it's supposed to be technical, so I've got to switch the right switch on. What I would like to do is to introduce you to our experience, our journey, and you'll see that the first slide here is basically everything's connected in this world. What we do in one area connects to something else, and education is no different. And so the first slide there, you'll see 4 interconnecting circles. Now the beauty of our model is that Cyclone has been involved in every aspect of it. And that is why our model works. It's because we've sat down with Cyclone and we said, what do we want to achieve for the future? What do we want to achieve now? But what is St Thomas going to look like in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, 50 years' time? In order to understand what St Thomas's will be like in the future, we've got to start now. And we have to rethink our thinking about school, about the idea of what a classroom looks like, what does teaching and learning mean, what the subjects that we teach. And we just don't have enough time, but I'll talk to you about our new curriculum and what we want to design there for our new curriculum. But what I would like to say is that why it works is that we have a solid foundation about who we are and what we're about. And basically the Cyclone, work with Cyclone allows us to fulfill this dream, to fulfill this vision, to actually get this vision and enact it today, to make it alive and well. And in order to do that, we have to develop a curriculum with these values. Now, when I talk about these values, we have to think differently. And the thing about Cyclone is that they will walk the journey with you. And the thing about Cyclone is that in actual fact they're a company that's an educational company. They walk with us through the journey from where we are to where we want to go, and they're with us. Yes, they need skills like Annika, who will talk to you very, very shortly. Her passion, her love is for teaching and learning. But she helped our staff to how do we use these tools for teaching and learning? How does these tools transform the way in which we perceive our children? And what is knowledge? And so forth. And so, as you can see, these are the core values of our school, but they are the core values bedded and right into our curriculum. And how do we embed these values in our curriculum? Well, let's look at the tools that we have. And the tools that Cyclone gives you, or 365, through Microsoft 365, which is another story, gives Cyclone train teachers, formate teachers into using these tools to make their teaching and learning more meaningful and inspiring kids. But at the heart of it, of this diagram here, shows you the number of levels of development that's in the school. And a person like myself, I have to look at all these things here. And as you can see, the arrows means that the values of the school are embedded right through the whole system, basically. Now, Cyclone will work with you through those. Okay, so for example, what is the teacher appraisal about? How do we change that? Because we've had to go under a whole process of change of our appraisal. Professional development. What is professional development? How do we look at professional development and so forth? And so Cyclone, the wonderful thing about Cyclone is that they enter a dialogue working through that, really. And I'm about to finish now. And really, at the heart of it, at the end of the day, is that we're not preparing students for workplace readiness. We've got to keep in mind that we are teaching the whole child. And that's at the heart of Catholic theology, particularly educational theology, if I could use that term. And so we must not lose the whole person on sight. I know the world in which our kids are growing up and will live in is a different world in which we are living in today. And the jobs out there of tomorrow will be different from today. But in one sense that's very true, but our story is about focusing on the whole child. And these competencies are very, very important. And Cyclone will work with us, it has worked with us, it is working with us to make sure that these key competencies and these attributes are instilled in our curriculum, that we're constantly teaching it all the time. Now, that's basically me in a nutshell. I'm going to stop now, but please phone me, ring me, we'll Skype, and we'll talk about how Cyclone's enriched our teaching and learning and why it's transforming our school and why it's so successful for student achievement. So I'll finish there. So please email me, contact me, we'll even have Skype, telephone. So I'll hand you over to Christine, and she will give her spiel as a principal in leading this change.
I might just stay down here if you can all hear me. Is that okay? Just from a principal perspective, before we developed a relationship with Cyclone, we had an in-house technical support, which is very siloed, very difficult to expose that person to constant professional development, updating, probably poor strategic direction around our technological tools. At a point in our curriculum where we, senior leadership team and some of the staff, probably a small number of the staff, were really thinking around 21st century practice and where to take our curriculum and what to do. But I would say in terms of where we were at with both our infrastructure, our technology, our knowledge and our practice, it was probably like 15th century around the technology. We had to work with some personnel changes, but when we made the move to the relationship with Cyclone, in the space, I was talking with Paul last night, because this relationship was only cemented in November last year, between then and now, it's been like 500 years development. I can't believe what's happened in our school in this space of time. And what's made it work? It's because you can go and get any good firm really to give you, I guess, good advice around technology infrastructure and around purchase of equipment. But in the end, what changes your school, and you all know this, whether you're teachers or whether you're leaders or whoever you are, it's the thinking that the professionals do. It's what goes on up here. Because in the end, the technology is merely a tool to take you to that. And now it's a tool that, you know, has some fantastic potential for all the interactivity that you want around 21st century practices of teaching. But if the thinking of teachers doesn't change, you're wasting our time, because essentially you can still use the technology like a 1v5. You know, with each kid with their device individually, you can still be teaching in a way that is essentially in lots of ways no different to the 1960s. So what we've found most valuable with Cyclone is two things, I think. One is that, like all of you, our finances were very stretched. So when we first met with the people, it was really important to us that we just didn't suddenly blow our finances out of the water and establish infrastructure that we couldn't sustain. And going forward too, we knew we had to make such a massive jump and such a massive injection, because there had been very poor strategic thinking around purchasing. We had some really old gear in school. That massive jump wasn't going to blow us out of the water financially. So we were assured that our interests were at heart, and at the time, the person we met with was Lee, fantastic guy, but you know, you're cynical hacks the out yes. How much information will we tell them about what we're spending now? Because a firm could potentially take that and make use of it if they're totally profit orientated. But what I would say is the integrity of the people we've worked with at Cyclone has been amazing, because we actually did open up and told them what our issues were and what we were spending and how constrained we were. We've had an amazing development at that time, but Cyclone worked very carefully to keep everything within where we needed to be. So we have needed to inject more around purchase and infrastructure, but in terms of our help desk, our on-site support, we're actually spending very little more than what we did, but the bang for the buck compared to what we had before is incredible. So over the time that we've been working with Cyclone, the integrity has been fantastic. But the best thing about it for us has been the holistic part of it. So we're getting our on-site technical support plus distant technical support if we need it. We're getting assistance or partnerships, not just assistance, around our strategic thinking around our infrastructure and our purchase, and we're getting our professional development. And because Cyclone is involved in each stage, whichever part they're working on, they have an overview of what's going on the other part. So for example, if the on-site person is getting a lot of questions, it's very easy to work out, is this actually about the technology, or is this about the teacher's competence around technology, or their thinking around education? And they know exactly what's going on around professional development, because we're working very closely together on that. So what we've found with the Cyclone relationship, and we can only talk about our journey and our experience, is that they have been fantastic people to work with, that they have had integrity around managing the limited resources that we have, and we all have, and they have helped move us. We've done the thinking and leadership about where we want to go, but in terms of helping our staff to remove the fear, to feel confident, to develop skills, to work collegially, has been amazing. We have gone in 2 terms from, we went in the dark ages around our thinking, but certainly around our technology we were, to quite a radical shift towards quite a radical new curriculum with 100% staff buy-in, which any of you are principals, you know how difficult that is. And staff are enjoying it. And I've got staff who've had 40 years in the school, who might have been our greatest resistors, who have found a total reinvigoration of their love of teaching. And I don't think they'll retire now, even though they're in their early 70s, because they're loving what they're doing. Annika's actually been a key part of that, because she's come in and worked in-house. We've had our staff in teams. Everything's been done in teams. with a philosophy of no teacher left behind. So some staff are obviously at the forefront, and some staff started from a point of struggling. But they are loving it and enjoying it. And for us, it's been the total package, which is different to other technology firms. And I think actually the professional development angle of it has been the most critical part of the whole package. So that's in a real short nutshell what we've found incredibly valuable about this partnership, but it has transformed us. We wanted to go there, but it has been the vehicle that the technical skill and the professional development skill around 21st century pedagogies and the enabling of that through technology that's transformed our schools. So there'll be a number of firms you can go to, but for our journey, I couldn't recommend our partnership with Cyclone more highly. And Annika, you've been a massive part of that. And it's not just your knowledge, it's your personality. To take some highly resistant teachers, and it's natural that they were resistant, they were afraid. It's a workload, so we worked very hard to change our budget, the agreement of staff, to do less of that one day outside staff, and to channel a lot of our PD budget into in-house release, so that we weren't asking teachers to do a lot of this massive change after 3 o'clock. So a lot of the team-based PD is happening inside the school day. And it's your personal skills as well as your technological knowledge and your love for teaching, which has affected our teachers and helped take them on the journey. So it's an endorsement, and I'm unashamed about it. It's a very strong endorsement. So that's our journey, and as Paul said, many of you would like to have a chat to us because each context is different. Each school will have different needs, and you'll be on a similar but different your own journey. You're very welcome to come down and see us or talk to us, because no doubt we can learn from you as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Just before you run away, thank you very much. That was lovely. But we are absolutely, my name's Annika McPhail, I'm the Professional Learning Manager. So when I started with Cyclone, I was a Microsoft specialist. I had Microsoft funding, and then that changed and we put Megan in Wellington with that funding. And then I became a digital learning specialist, so I supported schools no matter what platform they were using, and now we've got a team, and so I'm the manager of the team. So there's been a lot of change happen over the last 2 years. Prior to that, I was teaching. I am absolutely and totally passionate about education, and I do pride myself on my behaviour management, which is why Christine said I can get through to some people that they felt maybe they couldn't before. I think if you can get 13-year-old boys to stand up on the stage and dance in front of the community, then you can get 70-year-olds to sit down and actually understand technology and work through that. So that's been a good challenge for me, and we've seen lots of happy faces at the end of the days. What I really want to talk to you about today is about those professional learning communities. And the Minister of Education yesterday actually talked about that, which is quite a nice inlet for me. But what we find when we go into schools is that sometimes we'll talk to the IT director, sometimes we'll talk to a group that's the e-learning group, and often those are the ones that don't necessarily need that extra help, but they're running it within their school. So what we've done at St Thomas's, and what Christine and Paul have led us to, is work with every single staff member across the school. And it's really, really important, because what we find is that when we go into those schools and we get to sit down and we get to have those conversations with staff that aren't necessarily confident with e-learning and digital technology, they tell you a few things that they're not going to tell other people in the staff meetings. We find that often I can come in and say, okay, so, if you just log into your Office 365 or into your Google Drive, and they just look at me, like, if you just go into your emails and then we can find everything from there, oh no, yeah, I can do that. But they might have sat through a whole heap of PD in their school and never put their hand up and said in front of the staff, I have no idea what you're talking about, because they've actually got through a whole term of not knowing what anyone's talking about. So for us, it's actually about going into those sort of schools and supporting every single person so that we can actually create change within the school, because you're always going to have your 20% resistors. When I had 5 staff at the school I worked in, I had one, so that was my 20%, and she was my best friend on the staff, but she absolutely hated technology and wanted to throw her computer out of the window. And I was the one that was constantly standing up at staff meetings and saying, hey, have you tried this, have you tried that? And, you know, she'd always sit there going, here's Annika again, she knows all this stuff, she's really good at this, she's passionate about it, and had completely zoned out to my voice around digital technology. And then someone else would come into the school and they'd say what I'd been saying, and she'd listen to them. It's like, I've been saying that for the last 6 months, it's really unfair. But now I can see why. For her, I had the technology in my classroom. I'm a bit of a geek. I just finished my postgrad in e-learning and digital technology last year, and I love getting online badges and all that kind of stuff, so total geek. But for the people coming in from the outside now, we can answer those questions candidly that you wouldn't normally ask. You know, we can sit down with you and spend that time with you, but senior management have to let that happen within the school. And I think we're trying to flip this professional development model on its head, where you're not sending the same people to the same conferences every year. You know, I was the one that went to the conferences and came back to tell the school about it. Well, no one really wanted to hear about that other conference that I'd been to around e-learning, because I was the one using it in my classroom, and again, it was my voice. So it's about actually having a whole school approach. So the fabulous thing for me is that when I get someone email me a question from a school now, and especially at St Thomas's, I can actually veer them to the right person within their staff. So we're starting to create those professional learning communities within that school. So instead of me constantly coming in, we like to create a sustainable in-house professional development model. So we come in, we work with the staff, we show the staff what they need to know, but we work alongside the vision of the school. So for St Thomas's, they were working on having all of their students be on Office 365 and use the OneNote class notebook creator to give feedback to students and work alongside teachers and that kind of thing. So every single staff member now has that set up, and I had a day with every single faculty. So throughout that day, it wasn't just about me standing up and telling them what OneNote class notebook creator was and how to set it up. It was actually, okay, what do you teach? How do you teach? Where are all your resources for your students? How are you going to give students feedback, and creating those resources, and then having a couple of hours at the end of the day to actually put stuff in those resources and have it as a workable document as soon as they left. Because a frustrating thing for me when I used to go to PD was that I'd go and I'd learn about something, and then I had to find time to actually go and create that stuff or look into it even further. So our model is that those people working with us need to have that time while they're working with us and that support to be able to create the resources that they need to go and use straight away. And I'll get back to my slide now, I get a little bit passionate. If you don't know anything about Cyclone, we've been around for about 25 years. We are nationally based, we're Auckland, Dunedin, Wellington, Christchurch, but we do also work remotely and we travel a lot. There's 5 of us on the digital learning team, and we are very, very busy people. And what I found when I was teaching, and the board funded all of my students to have a device in 2008, in my first year of teaching, I had no idea what I was doing, and there was no one out there to really come in and give me any kind of support. We were out at Mount Summers Springburn School, and there's probably not there's one person in the room that knows where that is, I'm a Canterbury person. But apart from that, you know, I didn't know about being on Twitter and talking to educators on there. I didn't know about Facebook groups where teachers talked about what they were doing. The Big Maniakalani project didn't have the technology in yet, so we didn't really know who to go to and to ask for help. So now, all of a sudden, there's people like us out there that can come in and share their experiences, their resources, talk to you about what other schools are doing, and just bring that context back to you within your learning environment, which is really cool. And it's funny that Paul talked about sending students into an environment where the jobs haven't been created yet. This job that I've got now wasn't created when I was studying to become a teacher. It didn't exist. BYD didn't exist when I was studying to become a teacher. And it's not necessarily that we have to try and sit down and create those jobs. It's about the skills, it's about those key competencies, and about students actually being safe online, you know, being good digital citizens, and all those kind of messages that are really important for our students, because there will always be nurses, there will always be doctors, there will always be people in the Air Force. All those skills students still need to have, but they also need to know now how to work in a digital world and in an online world and how to do that responsibly and how they can do that to better themselves. Something I always think about is my older brother. He's an animation artist for Cartoon Network over in Germany, but it took him a really long time to get there because he had no idea how to market himself. So he's an amazing, talented guy that's sitting, you know, in his room, and he never slept, and he had his little table set up, and he's doing all of his comics ever since we were kids, and he'd go to job interview after job interview, and he hasn't got amazing social skills. I love my older brother, but he hasn't got amazing social skills, so he found it really, really hard to sell himself in an interview and to get that job that he deserved. And throughout his schooling, he wasn't actually taught those skills. He wasn't taught how to market himself. He wasn't taught how to sit in a job interview and talk to people about what he did. He's really quiet, you know, and if someone asked him if he thought he was good at something, he'd probably say no. So it's just about giving those students, those managing self, you know, those kind of skills, self-regulation, all that kind of stuff that's really important to us nowadays. I've got a couple of references there, but I think Christine did a pretty good job. So I'll just leave those out. I don't want to blow a trumpet too much there. We've introduced something new this year called Cyclone Enable, and that's exactly what Christine's talking about. So we can support your infrastructure, and that's where it starts with us. So if we walk into a school and they say, oh, we really want to go BYD, but our internet keeps cutting out constantly, we'll say, hey, go back a few steps. You know, that is so important to get that sorted. The worst thing you can possibly do is get all students to bring a device and the internet not working, the teacher be frustrated and throw it out the window. It's not going to work. So we can come in and we can do like a bit of an audit and see what you've got, what you might need, and have a plan around it. We're really careful not to say, yes, you need all of this and you need it tomorrow. It's actually about having a really good, you know, 2-year plan where you've got those goals set out. So, okay, by the end of next term or by the end of this year, we'll make sure our ICT infrastructure is in place and we'll communicate that with our parents. So although you could bring your device, it's probably not going to be supported in our classrooms because we don't have the capability to do that. And then what we're going to do is the term after, we're actually going to put some investment into PD for staff. So when students start bringing those devices in, we feel like they're ready. Because that's another thing, and Ben talked about that when we had our sponsors session the other day, about students all bringing in different devices and teachers not knowing how to use them. And, you know, if a student brings you a device and says, I can't turn it on, well, I actually can't either. You know, I struggle now when I pick up an Android device. Where's the button to turn it on? I had that the other day. It's like, if I'm having that and I work with technology every day, you know, I can't imagine being a teacher in an environment where you've got 30 different devices coming to you saying, I need to do a software update. I don't know what software's on there. That kind of thing. So all that's really important. And then for us, the device is the last thing that you purchase. You know, you've got to have all of that stuff already set up within your school. And I briefed on this yesterday, so we are cross-platform. So anything that you're using in your school, we can come in and support you with. We're not just a Microsoft or a Google or an Apple company. We have all three, and all 3 of our staff are all teacher trained. All 4 of our staff are teacher trained. So some of the stuff that we do presentations and workshops. So that's where you can come and choose what, similar to this, but obviously we've never had 800 people come. So you can come in and you can opt into workshops around what platform you're using and that kind of thing. We do the online support, so if you're in a place where we can't get to you or you need something now, we can do that through Skype, we can do that through Google Hangout, it's not a problem at all. We do regional events, so we're more than happy if you've got a few schools that want to have a teachers only day or want to run a few little workshops, we're more than happy to get our team out to come and see you. And we just did one recently down in Winton with about 9 of the rural secondary schools down there, and it was really, really fantastic. One thing that we're really passionate about is that 21st century learning, and a workshop that we've recently been hosting that's been really effective is the 21st century learning design. Now all of this stuff was actually created by Microsoft, but it doesn't matter what platform you're using because it's not about the technology. It's a really amazing resource and it's free online to download and it aligns with our key competencies. So it talks about self-regulation. You know, it talks about, I've actually got here, which I can show you. Oh, I'll go to it later, that's fine. And one of the last skills on there is incorporating ICT into your classroom. So you don't have to do that. And that's part of the stuff that we do with schools all of the time. We're not just about computers, we're absolutely about teaching and learning. And if the students have a device or the teachers have a device as well, and it's all going to work, that's great. But don't try and fit a device into your learning for the sake of fitting a device into your learning, because that's never going to work. It's going to put teachers off and students will be bored because they're going into an environment where nothing's really happening with them. You can download all of that off the internet for free too if you just search for 21st century learning design. So why would you use the cloud? And it's interesting when Ron was introducing and saying there were terms that he wasn't sure of. I can remember going to an interface expo quite a few years ago now, and someone was talking to me about the cloud, and I literally had no idea what they were talking about. I went and Googled the cloud. What is this thing that everyone's talking about? And then I realised it was just the internet, that I've been using it for my emails. But there's all this lingo around now, and it's like, what is it? How do I use it? So for us, we support schools around how to use that effectively. It's things like staff collaboration that you couldn't do before, and that's where it comes in, where you're actually effectively creating those communities within your school. So it's not about every single staff member having their own website within their class and the students just going to that one themselves. It's about having that school-wide approach where you're all working together, and St Thomas's do that brilliantly. So I can remember going in there at the start of the year to their maths teachers, and the maths teachers wanted to set up one year 10 maths class on a site instead of having all of the different year 10 maths class, because actually Julie was going to teach some different things than Ben was, but Ben's students might actually benefit from what Julie was teaching her students. So they wanted all of the students to be able to access what the different teachers were teaching, and we don't always work extremely well with certain teachers. We all know that. I mean, as a student, I was another teacher, or sometimes, but as students, you know, we're going to benefit from Julie's teaching style, which she will show through what she's doing online. You know, she might upload videos, she might put resources and that kind of thing. So it's really, really important that you start creating those within your school, because it's going to be really interesting trying to create these schools of communities of schools, when we're not even doing it in our own schools yet. And that's what I think is really important, is that we start doing those things. And if you've got, you know, 2 year 3, 2 year 4 teachers doing that same thing in a primary context. As things like students having access to their classwork. So prior to that, students would be bringing their books or not. And I had year 6, 7, 8 students that I was working with. There is absolutely still a time and a place for handwriting things and for working things out on paper and for having that book where you can get your ideas down and all that kind of thing. But this is where the students can access their work from wherever they are, or teachers can access their stuff from wherever they are. Now, we always make sure that we say to teachers that doesn't mean that at midnight you need to be checking work if something comes into you. You have to create those boundaries for you. If you start checking work at midnight, students will expect you to check their work at midnight. There's quite a few students giggling down the back there going, yes, we will. So it's just about actually having those conversations with your staff and saying, okay, what are the expectations here? What are we going to do? And what do we expect our staff to do? And what do we want from our students? Managing student documents. So this is a really, really tough one for schools that we go into. Prior to having sites and having things like Google Classroom and that OneNote class notebook creator, everything was shared online. So all of a sudden, teachers have got hundreds and hundreds of documents that they're trying to trawl through to find the latest one the student's done, and it's a real nightmare, and it absolutely and totally puts you off. So we work with schools to set up that architectural structure in the background to make sure that everything you want to access is in one place instead of all of these different other places. That's the other thing, is when we go into schools often, they'll say we use this for this and we use that for that, and oh, we use that one as well, and teachers are starting to get a bit frustrated. It's like, yeah, well, they've actually got separate logins for all of those, and the students don't necessarily know which one they're using for what. So that's what's really good about Microsoft and Google hating each other so much, because they've both got their online environments that they're competing in education for very, very aggressively. So if you are a school using Google Apps for education, you can now do everything you need to in that environment where your students only have to log in and your teachers only have to log in using one login. If you are an Office 365 school, you can do the same. So it's not about taking bits from all of these different places, it's actually, I want to know what I need to know from this one environment and how can I do that? And we can work alongside you to talk about best practice within there. And then that's also supporting your learning community within your school, because you don't have those staff meetings where someone's sitting there going, oh, here's old Annika talking about a new tool that she wants us to use now. You know, it's, hey, so we're still working in our Office 365 environment, there's this new part to it and this is what we can do with it. Cool, everyone log in. You know, it's just so much easier to get people on board and to get people staying positive about those environments which are supporting our students' learning. Organisation and access. This used to drive me crazy. We had all of our stuff on our server at school, and from home I couldn't access the server, and if the server was down I couldn't access the server. I could open documents from there but I couldn't save them back to the server, and it was really, really frustrating. So working in the cloud environment means that you don't need to have those frustrations. Teachers can access the planning that they need to change. They don't have to take their big black planning folder around with them, which I used to put my back out with. I just had all of my planning online. So it meant that if I needed to change something or I needed to go back and look at an IEP that I was working with a student on or something like that, I could change it. Whoever had access to that had those changes automatically. So it also works for not having to email things back and forth constantly and that kind of thing. I had all of my planning done in OneNote and I had that shared with our principal. We had Aero come through and they said it was a sustainable way of planning. They were really happy with the way that it was set out, and it also meant that I wasn't having to stand at the photocopier every morning and make a list of things that I needed to print off for me for that day. So it's about working smarter. We're really careful not to make people do things twice. You know, there's absolutely no point in doing everything in your planner and then also doing it online, because someone actually wants your physical planner, but for you it works for you online. So you've got to also have those conversations as, you know, your senior leadership team, how are you gonna accept people's planning and work and that kind of thing. They're really important conversations to have. There's a couple more things I'll go through and then I'll pass over to Scott from LineWise. So students working collaboratively online, it's amazing now what students can do not having to be in the same room, not having to be in the same country. You know, pupils can be working on projects, inquiries, maths equations, anything they want to in a shared document, and it just breaks down those walls. It's been really amazing to see, has anyone seen the mystery Skype in the classroom stuff happening? Really, really cool. Where students, if you're on Twitter, I suggest you find mystery Skype. Students all log in and they run another school and the teacher set it up and they have to ask questions and the first one to guess where the other school is wins. But it's just really cool, yeah. You're working out, you know, parts of other people's cultures, accents, what it looks like in the background, all that kind of stuff is really, really interesting. That wasn't around before technology was in schools. So it's about actually not just, like Christine said, not just doing things on a computer that you could have done in a 1v5, but what are we actually going to do that's going to redefine teaching and learning in our schools? That's what's really important to us. One thing I did find at St Thomas's, they've got an awesome Year 7, 18 in their middle school, but they'd set up all of their planning for the students on OneNote, and then the students had no idea where they were meant to be. Because my mind works differently to yours, right? So if I set a structure up for something, it's not necessarily going to work the way that you work. And that's what was happening with the students. So it's about having things like live links, where you can click on something and it takes you to another document or the next part in a notebook. Really, really simple to set up, and it's about that navigation for students so they know exactly where they're meant to be going, rather than having to stand up in front of class and tell them 20 times, you need to find this page on this day, and you need to do this activity, and Katie and John, you're going to do that one together. Have the links set up with their names already there, they click on it, it takes them to their activity. It's all those little things, you know, instead of having to go through that process with them verbally 5 times a session, having it all there makes it so much easier for us teaching and learning. So the last thing I wanted to talk to you about is getting social. So I love Twitter. I've only just really found it since I started this job, but it's been really good to connect with other teachers. That's the only reason I use it. I don't use it for personal use at all, and it's been really, really effective because people are posting resources on there all the time. You know, they're posting readings around education and all that kind of thing. So get social online, and then because if you're in that, you can actually talk to your students how to be appropriate in there as well. Cool. So thank you very much. I'll hand over to Scott Noakes now from Linewise, and he's going to talk about student safety online. So thank you.
Hi, great to see you all here. Thanks, Annika, for fixing that, because I come from the Apple side of the world. Yeah, I'm here to talk to you about Linewise. So we've partnered with Cyclone. We're a Christchurch-based company, and what we really focus on is helping schools navigate this transition to using digital technology successfully and building an infrastructure that actually aids digital teaching and not impedes it. And so that's what we're really passionate about, and the part we fulfill in this is around network access management, who can get on the network, what can they access and how to do that very granularly, supporting BYOD painlessly, so no-touch BYOD support, so any child can bring any device onto the network and there are no concerns around doing that. And I guess one of the really key things we do is full visibility over usage of your network. And what we've found is that often it's corporate technology shoehorned into an educational environment, and they are ill-fitting from both a functionality perspective and also a cost perspective. Now, schools are charged for, the same thing roughly, that a corporate of 300 employees, but it's a school with 300 people. They're not the same thing, and the needs they have are not the same either. And what we see is these corporate technologies are very good at locking stuff down. But that's not what you want to do in school always. I guess my question is, are we teachers or jailers in this environment? And it really is up to us to teach children how to be good digital citizens. And that's what we're passionate about building, tools which enable this to happen, tools which help teachers in the classroom to gain control of this new digital environment we find ourselves in. And we do that through transparency and collaboration. So you live in very interesting times right now. There is a massive shift happening around BYOD, around modern learning environments, around digital learning. And it's incredibly challenging. And it's challenging from a cost perspective. You've got infrastructure to look after. And it's also really hard to manage this stuff as well. Often it gets in the way of what you're trying to do. So that's the problem we saw. And 2 years ago we founded Linewise to fix that and focus purely on building ICT solutions for schools. And to allow schools to self-manage this content and to be able to do that without needing ICT expertise. So a teacher can control the filtering, staff can control the filtering without needing to be a network expert. And to be able to share your duty of care. So quite often we see BYOD programs held up because there's so much fear around how do we know we're doing this well. So to be able to say, well, let's make this whole thing transparent and visible. You can see how your children are using the network, how students are using the network, and respond to it and set your access policy from a position of knowledge. And also to be able to identify where e-learning is flourishing, where teachers are using an approach using a variety of resources across the day, compared to one where it's struggling and that it's used sporadically and a very narrow amount of resources. So that's what we focus on doing. The way we do that is by providing managed network access services. We do that by putting an appliance on your network. And again, this is a service, so there's no upfront hardware cost to doing this. And we combine these network appliances to deliver the Surf-Wi service, and we combine that with cloud management to do network access control, usage visibility, content filtering, and classroom tools. And we do this in a way that works in a school environment. So schools are very complicated. You've got BYOD devices, you've got shared devices, you've got tablets, you've got Windows, you've got Google, you've got all these different things, which is a very diverse environment. And to try and manage that properly is quite challenging. So we're really focused on solving these problems easily. We have Google integration, Windows 365 integration. So if you're a Google school, your student can identify themselves on the network using their Google username and password. And they can bring their BYOD device, if they've got a new one for their birthday, bring it to school, put it on the network, connect to the Wi-Fi, sign in using their Google account or Windows 365, accept, they're on the network, and they're filtered according to the Google groups they belong to, or the Windows 365 groups they belong to. So it's really designed to work in schools. And now if you look at shared devices, it's quite challenging as well. So you've got devices that move between classrooms, you've got year 0 to 3 students which won't have a login, you've got older children who need a wider access to things. So we've built solutions that solve all these problems. So for year 0 to 3, we've got an avatar login where the student can, if they're year 0 to 3, just click on a photo of their teacher and be authenticated on that device as belonging to that room. And then get through to the websites they need to get to. And then we provide complete visibility over how students are using the network. So you get a dashboard which is live, you can see how many users are on the network, how much data is being consumed, who your top users are. In this example here, Cashmere Primary School did a music exploration lesson for year 7s using Spotify, which is where that black dot is. Suddenly it turned up in the top traffic. You can drill down and you see, okay, suddenly we've got Spotify use increasing dramatically in school, which is kind of fine, and for us paying for the bill for that. But what's not fine is the contention that causes on the network against, actual digital learning activities. So being able to see these things and see who's using Spotify. So here is a student who's been streaming Spotify across the entire day to their phone or their device, casing the music, hooray. And that's not bad, but it is bad, it's causing contention. So having this visibility enables conversations to highlight that and actually say, well, is this a fair thing to do on our network? Or should we just limit it outside lesson time? We can surface inappropriate behaviour very easily. You can do some very neat things. So, here we've got very granular visibility. So a teacher can see what their students are doing, and if one of their students is accessing inappropriate content, that teacher is immediately alerted, and they can go and have a timely conversation with that student to align their behaviour with what the school would wish in their environment. In the same way, the principal has weekly reports and alerts around teacher behaviour on the internet, which I know last year at Taranaki might have been quite a useful thing. It would save a lot of embarrassment for both the teacher and for the school. And you can do this down to a class level. And we've also got a parental login as well. So if you've got a BYOD program and it's causing concern by parents wanting to know, have concerns around how my device is being used at school, you can allow them to log in and see what their child is spending their time online doing and alert that parent should their child be exhibiting inappropriate behaviour. So it's really about sharing this duty of care and then setting your access based on what's really happening on your network, not on assumption. So see what's happening and respond to it rather than just making a whole bunch of assumptions and walking away and thinking you're safe. Because the internet shifts, it's not a stable thing. And the information allows you to do lots of other things as well. So now if you're using Mathletics, you can quantify the usage of Mathletics across your classes. So are you getting a good return on investment for the subscription you paid for Mathletics? Which classes are using it a lot or not at all, and should we keep paying for it? And we can also start surfacing this behaviour to students as well. So for an individual student, they can see what they spend their time online doing and how that compares to an average student in the school. And if they're a big outlier, they might want to think about the time they're spending on gossip sites or social media might be impacting the education they're there to get. And we're also moving towards crowdsourcing this information. So provide an open list of what are the 10 top maths applications used in New Zealand. And then Mathletics, I'm interested in that. Connect me with a local teacher who knows about Mathletics. So we can share best practice, I can understand pitfalls, and maybe look at some other things. So really build a community around this and connect teachers together. We do content filtering on pretty well everything. But again, I think that visibility for us is what's really interesting. But here the interesting thing is it's self-management. You can set up a policy which is appropriate to your school, your environment, and exactly what is the right thing for that. And anyone can do this. It's very easy to create a policy. here's a policy, you give it a name, you say what you want to do here, this is staff field high blocking, a whole bunch of bandwidth intensive resources. So SkyGo, TVN demand, downloading movies, kids will do things which will impact other people's browsing experiences. So, and being able to see them means you can say, right, okay, let's remove these applications because they're not appropriate or they're impacting on e-learning, and you apply it to whatever group you want, very straightforward. And what we've just released now, we're trialling this in a few schools, is classroom tools. So if you're a teacher, you can go to the mylinewise.net site, and because you're already authenticated on this device, we know who you are. It'll say, welcome, Ms. Susie Aiken. We know which rooms, or you're associated with certain rooms, and so you'll be able to say, right, for room 7, for the next 45 minutes, I'm going to relax the filtering, because I'm teaching Greek classics, and we need access to the Louvre site. It's got new pictures on it, but it's appropriate for the lesson. So when the student, whereas previously they'd be blocked, trying to get to the Louvre site, they would be able to get through to it for that lesson. And that teacher doesn't have to contact the IT department to say, hey, I'm teaching Greek classics, I need access. We can also block the internet. So if the internet's got nothing to do with your lesson plan, turn it off. I wish I could do that when I was teaching co-club sometimes. So in the same way, if this student's trying to get to Yik Yak, it will tell her that, Zoe, your teacher has blocked the internet for the next 15 minutes. And in the same way, you can curate resources. So the teacher can paste URLs into the browser, and when the student goes to MyLineWise, they will have those URLs which they can click through and immediately get to the resources related to the lesson. And you can choose to restrict access as well. So if you want to really corral these, or if it's a test environment, you can do that too. You can have an access code which you can choose to share. So if a child tries to get to a site outside that, they can choose to share the override code and get access to it. And the blocking is replaced by visibility. So the teacher immediately has indication of who's on track in the lesson and who's exhibiting time-wasting behaviour or suboptimal behaviour. And I guess that's the thing which we're quite passionate about, is that inappropriate behaviour is really the exception here. It's more around the suboptimal and time-wasting behaviour, and see if we can provide teachers tools which can allow them to get control over that. Because it's very easy to pretend you're doing something when you're not on one of these devices. So that's an overview of our classroom tools that we've just developed and are trialling in a few schools. And hopefully that provides you a bit of a summary of what we're about. We're really about building ICT infrastructure that works for teachers and for schools and lets them create an environment which gives appropriate access to the right people and visibility to those who need it. And it's a very cost-effective thing as well. There's no upfront cost for the service. It's 50 cents per student per month based on your published role. And it allows you to self-manage all the stuff and do it on any existing network. So you're augmenting your existing network with BYOD, visibility, self-managed filtering, classroom tools for teachers, and all those things. And if you're curious on any of these things or want to have a look at what we can do, then I'll be at the Cyclone stand, have a chat to me, get hold of Cyclone. Yeah, I really appreciate your time. Thanks.